On the day the Lord God made earth and sky, before any wild plants appeared on the earth, and before any field crops grew, because the Lord God hadn't yet sent rain on the earth, and there was still no human being to farm the fertile land, the Lord God formed the human from the topsoil of the fertile land, and blew life's breath into his nostrils. In the fertile land, the Lord God grew every beautiful tree with edible fruit, and also he grew the tree of life in the middle of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The Lord God took the human and settled him in the Garden of Eden to farm it and to take care of it.
Talmud. This is same case. The best way to get that is just ask a question in your reading response papers, and when I return the response to you, I'll attach like an article.
So this poem is a poem about our relationship with people and our dealings with each other, and it's titled Wrongly Thrown Rocks. When God breathed the dust, we were born from dirt, flesh made of the earth, sinners after birth. So why do we judge every other smudge with a sense so keen, as if we're clean, passing on our blame, covering up shame with pretentious deeds, thinking no one sees, betraying belief, displacing the grief, by works we are known to cast the first stone. And that's that piece. I wrote that poem for this film because I feel like our relationships with each other speak to who we are as people and how we deal with the land and our relationships to the land. You know, how we treat each other is similar to how we treat the land, and how we leave the land is going to be essentially how we treat our future generations. So.
Our correlation with the land we have out here on our grounds, I'm glad to see that we are cultivating it and making something out of it other than just a landfill or a system where we just throw trash. We just misuse what God has given us. And I'm glad to see we're starting to do something other than that with it.
I would say that maybe for the first time, because farming not on a large scale, I've never been part of farming on a large scale. But just looking at how we have taken care of this little plot that we have over here, and how much this little land can produce. It produces a lot, and it was. I was thinking about that. How can this little piece of land produce so much?
I have been gardening since I've been old enough to walk, and it was passed on to me from my father and my grandpa, and I pass it on to my kids. I have 2 sons, and they are out there in their garden with me, and they love it just like I do. And gardening's important for sustainability, self-sustainable, to have healthy foods, know where the foods come from. I know how they're grown, and I don't rely on somebody else. Don't know whether I'm gonna go hungry or not. I'm not, because I can grow my own food. And I wanna pass that heritage on to my kids. That's what I would say to Indiana is like, yeah, people need to start giving back. We can't all be consumers and not be producers.
You know, I think that modern industrial agriculture for sure has been something that has definitely been something that has hurt the earth instead of replenished the earth. And if we were to return back to the natural practices of the natives before, you know, modern industrial agriculture, some of the practices that they took by, the way that they tilled the land, the way that they grew it, their growing patterns and stuff like that. I think not only would the land be in better shape, but you're also producing a better sort of produce for the people.
And I have never grown cucumbers in my life. And the first time because I grew some cucumbers, I was like, oh boy, these things come out in like dozens. You know, I was like almost overwhelmed when it came to harvesting these things. It's like, yeah, there's piles and piles of them. But what this program, this gardening program has done for me is at least to show me that it's very possible with a small piece of land, that how much you can produce from that is just enormous.
And to take that space and to utilize it in a way that brings people into connection with the greater world around them, with the growth, with agriculture, with food production, would in a way reconnect them with their own survival.
If we vary and add more different types of vegetables, then we won't just be monocropping. Because you'll have a whole field that's just corn or a whole field that's just soybeans. And that's good to produce corn and soybeans, but if you produced other things that more people ate, it'd be healthier for them, because there's plenty of places that don't have like different produce to eat. You know, inner cities have problems with this because the kids there, they don't eat as well as rural city kids or rural town kids. And it harms them academically in a lot of ways. Getting those nutrients are very important.
No, it's really special just to see what you put down come up and flourish and turn into something. It's like a breath of life is being put down into the ground and it's producing something. You're seeing God's creation turn into something from out of it. Seems like something so small. And I think that is something that's special. And so from year 1 to year 2, it's like, now I can't wait to get out to the garden. And from the first year to, it's like, oh man, I'm out here again. And now it's like, I look out and I just wish that I can go out there and water and just go out there and see how my plants are doing.
When we talk about change, because we could look at change in many different ways, right? We could talk about change in how I think about something, or we could talk about change how I want to do certain things. I think this garden has changed me in both ways. The way I think about gardening and what I want to do, especially when I get out of this place, like, okay, I know that, okay, it is very possible. You know, it's very possible for me to supply for myself and for other people with a very small piece of land. Yeah.
The land we're using here at the facility for growing gardens and vegetables, and all these things are now being produced and sent back into society to help aid those who can't grow these vegetables or things of that nature. The healing is something that we all need, because it allows man to see his dependence on the land, how the land then can come back and give a return. It's a reciprocal relationship. If you're good to it, it will be good to you. And that's something that I think we've forgotten as a society. We just take the land and we commandeer it, and it becomes what it is, and we move on to the next part. I think the healing comes in. I've seen the guys here in the institution who've never had an interest at all in farming or gardening, and now I see them look out of the windows on a consistent basis. They go to the windows every morning 4 or 5 times, and they're looking at a small seedling that they may have just started to work on to try to get it to just start nourishing. And it's like Christmas morning for them, the moment they look out the window and they see something start to flourish, and they're just so excited about it. That's a healing process.
The desert and the parched land will be glad. The wilderness will rejoice and blossom. Like the crocus, it will burst into bloom. It will rejoice greatly and shout for joy. They will see the glory of the Lord, the splendor of our God. Then will the eyes of the blind be opened, and the ears of the deaf unstopped. Then will the lame leap like a deer, and the mute tongue shout for joy. Water will gush forth in the wilderness, and streams in the desert. The burning sand will become a pool, the thirsty ground bubbling springs. In the haunts where jackals once lay, grass and reeds and papyrus will grow.
Consider now the Consider now the miracle of rain that falls into the soil and swells a grape upon the vine. It's always been water to wine. Imagine every buried seed enshrouded